I both made. So I take the ranking member at his word today that, in fact, he will not rest until we get them answers, and I commit the same that I will not, and I urge the passage of this resolution.
Gentleman's time has expired. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 708, the previous question is ordered on the resolution. Those in favor of adopting the resolution say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed to. And without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon. The gentleman from Maryland.
Vote. Roll call.
Gentleman is
yeas and nays.
Gentleman is requesting the yeas and nays. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, the nays and yeas are ordered. Yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
In a vote just a few minutes ago, the U.S. House of Representatives has voted to hold Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt of Congress, criminal contempt. It's the first time a sitting cabinet member has been held in contempt. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee had been seeking documents from the Justice Department on a 10-month period of the Operation Fast and Furious gun-walking program. And the vote in the House was a 255 to 67 to 1. 255 voting in favor, 67 against, and 1 voting present. And that was Representative Dan Lipinski. 7 Democrats joined Republicans in voting in favor. And over 100 Democrats, I think the number is 108, did not vote. They walked off the floor if you saw the vote a bit earlier. Only 2 Republicans voted against the criminal contempt citation, and that was unofficially Steve LaTourette of Ohio and Scott Ridgell of Virginia. This is a vote on a resolution which would authorize the Oversight Committee to seek a declaratory judgment in federal court affirming that the Attorney General's duty is to comply with the committee's subpoena for documents. It is a 15-minute vote. A few minutes ago, the White House released a statement reaction to the criminal contempt citation, and part of that reads, in an act of good faith this week, the administration made an additional offer which would have resulted in the committee getting unprecedented access to documents, dispelling any notion of an intent to mislead. But unfortunately, a politically motivated agenda prevailed, and instead of engaging with the President in efforts to create jobs and grow the economy, today we saw the House of Representatives perform a transparently political stunt. That's part of the statement from the White House. Also, just a short while ago, the Attorney General himself had a statement to reporters. Here's a look.
Good afternoon. Today's vote is the regrettable culmination of what became a misguided and politically motivated investigation during an election year. By advancing it over the past year and a half, Congressman Issa and others have focused on politics over public safety. Instead of trying to correct the problems that led to a series of flawed law enforcement operations, and instead of helping us find ways to better protect the brave law enforcement agents like Agent Brian Terry who keep us safe, they have led us to this unnecessary and unwarranted outcome. During this time, the men and women of the United States Department of Justice and I have remained focused on what should and must be our government's top priority, protecting the American people. When concerns about Operation Fast and Furious first came to light, I took action and ordered an independent investigation into what happened. We learned that the flawed tactics used in this operation began in a previous administration, but I made sure that they ended in this one. I also made sure that agents and prosecutors across the country knew that such tactics must never be used again. I put in place new policies, new safeguards, and new leadership to make certain of this, and took extraordinary steps to facilitate robust congressional oversight. Now, let me be very clear. That was my response to Operation Fast and Furious, and any suggestion to the contrary is simply not consistent with the facts. I had hoped that congressional leaders would be good faith partners in this work, and some were. Others, however, have devoted their time and their attention to making reckless charges, unsupported by fact, and to advancing truly absurd conspiracy theories. Unfortunately, these same members of Congress were nowhere to be found when the Justice Department and others invited them to help look for real solutions to the terrible problem of violence on both sides of our southwest border. That's tragic, and it is also irresponsible. The problem of drugs and weapons trafficking across this border is a real and significant public safety threat, and it deserves the attention of every leader in Washington. In the face of these and other challenges, the Justice Department has continued to move forward in fulfilling its critical law enforcement responsibilities, whether it is with regard to prosecuting financial and health care fraud, achieving a record mortgage settlement, taking aggressive action in protecting the most vulnerable among us, or challenging proposed voting changes and redistricting maps that would potentially disenfranchise millions of voters. This Department of Justice has not been afraid to act, nor have I been. Now, some of these enforcement decisions were not politically popular and help to explain the actions that were taken today by the House. As Attorney General, I do not look to that which is politically expedient. On behalf of the American people who I am privileged to serve, I seek justice. In recent weeks, the Justice Department secured its 7th conviction in the most serious terrorist plot our nation has faced since 9/11. And just 2 days ago, the Department awarded more than $100 million in grants to save or to create law enforcement jobs, including more than 600 jobs for recent veterans. This is the kind of work that leaders in Washington should be striving together to advance. At a time when so many Americans are in need of our help, I refuse to be deterred from it, and I will not let election year politics and gamesmanship stand in the way of continued progress. Today's vote may make for good political theater in the minds of some, but it is at base both a crass effort and a grave disservice to the American people. They expect and they deserve far more. As a result of the action taken today by the House, an unnecessary court conflict will ensue. My efforts to resolve this matter, short of such a battle, were rebuffed by Congressman Issa and by his supporters. It's clear that they were not interested in bringing an end to this dispute or even obtaining the information they say they wanted. Ultimately, their goal was the vote that, with the help of special interest, they now have engineered. Whatever the path that this matter will now follow, it will not distract me or the men and women of the United States Department of Justice from the important tasks that are our responsibility. A great deal of work for the American people remains to be done. I'm going to be getting back to it. I suggest that those who orchestrated today's vote do the same.
Attorney General Eric Holder from within the hour, reacting to the House vote holding him in criminal contempt of Congress regarding the documents in the Fast and Furious investigation. It's the first time a sitting cabinet member has been held in contempt. The vote 255 in favor, 67 against, and 1 voting present. Over 108 Democrats did not vote. 17 Democrats voted in favor, and 2 Republicans voted against. This 15-minute vote is a vote essentially to hold the Attorney General in civil contempt. It would allow the Oversight Committee to seek a declaratory judgment in federal court, affirming that the Attorney General's duty is to comply with the committee's subpoenas for documents. It's a 15-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 258, the nays are 95, with 5 voting present. The resolution is agreed to. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Are we ready to go?
Susan, we're going to do the suspension. I'm sorry.
The unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules and passing H.R. 5889, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 5889, a bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to provide for protection of maritime navigation and prevention of nuclear terrorism and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? So many in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the question suspending the rules of H.R. 3412, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 3412, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 1421 Veterans Memorial Drive in Abbeville, Louisiana as the Sergeant Richard Franklin Abshire Post Office Building.
The question is, the House will suspend the rules and pass the bill. So many in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion is considered laid upon the table. The unfinished business is a question on suspending the rules H.R. 3501, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 3501, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 125 Kerr Avenue in Rome City, Indiana as the SPC Nicholas Scott Hartke Post Office.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many of their favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules passing H.R. 3772, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 3772, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 150 South Union Street in Canton, Mississippi as the First Sergeant Landris Cheeks Post Office Building.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many are in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bills are passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Do you have 3276? The unfinished business, the question is suspending the rules and passing H.R. 3276, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 3276, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 2810 East Hillsborough Avenue in Tampa, Florida as the Reverend A. Brown Post Office Building.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion is reconsidered, is laid upon the table. The unfinished business, the question of suspending the rules passing H.R. 1447 as amended, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 1447, a bill to amend Title 49 United States Code to direct the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, Transportation Security Administration to establish an Aviation Security Advisory Committee and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? So many in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business, the question of suspending the rules passing H.R. 5843, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 5843, a bill to amend the Homeland Security Act of 2002 to permit use of certain grant funds for training conducted in conjunction with a national laboratory or research facility.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the question of suspending the rules and passing H.R. 3173 as amended, which the clerk will report by title.
Union Calendar Number 371, H.R. 3173, a bill to direct the Secretary of Homeland Security to reform the process for the enrollment, activation, issuance, and renewal of a Transportation Worker Identification Credential, TWIC, to require in total not more than one in-person visit to a designated enrollment center.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? So many in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The Chair will entertain the request for one-minute speeches. The gentleman from Nebraska rise.
Mr. Speaker, to address the House and revise and extend remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I inadvertently missed the vote on Resolution 442. My vote would have been yes. I yield back.
Back. Gentleman's statement will appear in the record. The request for one-minute speeches. For what purpose is the gentlewoman from Texas? Without objection, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today because this is a great country. In fact, I would call it the greatest country in the world. And throughout my life's history, although we have traveled mountains and low valleys, I have been equal and unequal in this nation. But yet today I feel as tall as the pine trees, because our Supreme Court shed itself of diverse and sometimes divisive bickering and upheld the Constitution of the United States and granted to the American people affordable health care. It granted to the sickest of the sick the opportunity to be covered by insurance. It granted to seniors who fall into donut holes and have to choose prescription drugs over food a relief line. It granted to hospitals who take in indigent patients who may otherwise die on sidewalks in America an opportunity to take care of those patients. It gave children with pre-existing disease an opportunity to live fully in this country. And so now the Affordable Care Act is the law of the land. We have been vindicated. Every single vote, those members who have lost and those who won, we've been vindicated. Thank God for the United States Supreme Court. I yield back.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. Are there any further requests for one-minute speeches? Seeing none, under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison, is recognized for 60 minutes as a designee.
I'll claim time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will suspend. The Chair will entertain special order speeches without prejudice to the resumption of the legislative business.
We're going to do that in the middle. Okay?
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we will claim the time, special order time, and I have some charts to set up, so I'll take a moment to do that. That's good. Well, Mr. Speaker, my name is Keith Ellison, and I'm claiming the time on behalf of the Progressive Caucus. I'm very pleased to be joined by my dear friend from the great state of Ohio, Mr. Dennis Kucinich. This Progressive Caucus, we have a website we refer people to. That's at cpc.grijalva.house.gov. Urge everybody to check it out because there's a lot of excellent information. This we call the Progressive Message, and today we're going to focus on three topic areas, Mr. Speaker. That'll be the area of 1, the historic health care, 2, the travesty of justice perpetuated on Eric Holder, and 3, the voter ID issue that's proliferating across the country, trying to restrict and suppress the votes of Americans. So that's our progressive message for today. I want to go quickly to my friend from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, but I just want to introduce the subject by saying that today was a historic day. The historic health care bill was passed many months ago, but until the Supreme Court of the United States said that this bill is constitutional, this act is constitutional, it was always in jeopardy of being overturned. We in the Progressive Caucus believe, and where many of us were signatories and co-sponsors of H.R. 676, which is a single-payer bill or health care for all, Medicare for all. But I want to say personally that I think that today that this is a dramatic step forward in the quest to make sure that all Americans are covered and can go to the doctor. This is a very important step. It's an advance, and so I'm happy to see it. With that, I'd like to just turn some time over to the gentleman from Ohio to make any comments he may care to make about the health care bill or the Supreme Court decision. So I yield to the gentleman from Ohio.
I want to thank the gentleman from Minnesota, Congressman Ellison, for his leadership in the Progressive Caucus, and thank you for yielding some time to talk about this momentous decision by the Supreme Court. First of all, a little bit of context. I represent Cleveland, Ohio. There are many people in Cleveland who are uninsured. There are many people in Cleveland who could not afford health care. There are many people who are working and they can't get their families covered. This issue of health care reform is one of the defining issues in our country. And it's one that we finally grappled with in 2010 to come up with a bill that not everyone agreed with. As a matter of fact, as Mr. Ellison will remember, I didn't agree with this. I was not satisfied with health care reform within the context of a for-profit system, because I want a not-for-profit system. But while we have a for-profit system, one of the things we needed to do was to make sure children with pre-existing conditions would be covered, make sure all these lifetime caps on the amount of money that people could claim for expenses, make sure that those were removed, make sure that people we're given a fighting chance with the insurance companies. And what's happened is the Affordable Care Act finally took a step in a direction of reform. Now, it's an important step, and the Supreme Court has said you can do that under Congress's taxing authority. But it's just a step, and all of us understand that there's still millions of Americans who are finding health care out of reach, even with the help that the Affordable Care Act offers. And that's why at the state, there are still states, such as Vermont, that are looking as to how they can go forward with a single-payer plan within their state.
Would the gentleman yield for a moment?
Yes, I yield.
Let me just ask the gentleman a question. You had an amendment that we were trying to move on to the Affordable Care Act, which would allow states, if they chose to pursue alternatives like a single-payer system. Do you recall your amendment? What were some of the things
well,
that
what
were
we're looking at, we keep in mind that the Employee Retirement Income Security Act essentially would stop states from going forward. So we asked basically a waiver of that. And the amendment would have provided for a waiver so states would have no legal bar to pursue a single-payer system. That was essentially passed in committee and then stripped out. But the point is, we can enable that. Congress can facilitate that. And the passage of Affordable Care Plus, the Supreme Court saying, Congress can move on health care. Congress can take a step.
Yep.
Finally puts us in a position where we can elevate health care to the highest level of public concern. And every American who's out there tonight who's worried about whether they'd be able to get access to affordable health care suddenly realizes that it is possible. And for those poor people across America wondering if they're going to be shut out by one aspect of the Supreme Court decision, now it's up to the states to reaffirm the position of the state in the life of their citizens by saying, if you're a poor person, we're not going to use the Supreme Court decision to block your access from the resources, to block you from having access to the resources of the government with respect to health care. And so I think that we need to recognize that we've taken a big step here. And as someone who wasn't sure at first, as someone who, in a sense, reluctantly voted for the Affordable Care Act on the hope that by proving we could have reform within the context of a for-profit system, that it would open the door for further reforms, I'd say this is a great day. It shows that it's possible to reform that for-profit system, and I'm hopeful, as we're celebrating today, we look down the road to what we're going to do in the future, which is to restart our efforts here, restart the effort for single-payer, knowing at least we have the assurance that more people are covered, that you don't have to worry about your child 26 and under, where they're going to be covered under policy, that you don't have to worry about a child with a pre-existing condition, that you don't have to worry about long-term caps, that you don't have to worry about if you're a senior where that donut hole is going to cause your budget to get crushed. What you have now is the government finally taking the side of the people and putting us in a position where we now are able, with integrity and with drive, to move towards a future where someday we're going to keep working for that single payer. So I want to thank Mr. Ellison for
Will the gentleman yield for another question?
I certainly will.
If the gentleman doesn't mind. So, like, today, I don't know if this happened to you, but it did happen to me. I just sort of I started thinking about all the door knocking that I did and thinking about the horror stories, the healthcare horror stories that I heard. And I just want to ask you today, you know, when you reflect on 57% of the people filing for bankruptcy being motivated by medical debt, when you hear about people getting a lifetime cap and not being able to get any additional health care, even when they got cancer, or if they got cancer, then they get dropped.
Gentleman's right. The gentleman is correct. And when you think of how many people, most bankruptcies are connected to people not being able to pay hospital bills.
Right.
And any single family has known the dread of having one individual get ill in the family and basically something that everything people have worked a lifetime for, they lose.
You know, the gentleman might, you know, reflect on the fact that many of these people you're referring to have insurance.
Oh, that's right. Think about this now. You can have insurance, and if you run up against caps, lifetime caps on coverage, you're out of luck. You can be insured, because there's so many Americans who've gotten in trouble financially. Even though they have insurance, they can't pay the bills. The bills have sent Americans into poverty. And so we need to realize that we've taken a step in the direction of a substantial support for the American people and their health care with the Affordable Care Act, but it's not the final step. Again, I am here to share with you, Mr. Chairman, my willingness to continue the effort towards a universal, single-payer, not-for-profit health care. And you know what? Now that we have proven that reform of health care is possible, now that we have proven that health care is no longer the third rail of American politics, now that we have proven that the court will uphold an effort by the Congress to move towards health care reform, well, now that we've proven that, we can say it is possible to go to a place where we can have health care for all under a not-for-profit system. I yield back. I thank the gentleman for his leadership, and I look forward to working with you as we chart a new course in America for health care for all. Thank you.
Thank you. And the gentleman from Ohio, who I know he's got some things to do, I just want to say that when the final chapter is written on the improvement and the advance in health care in America, there will certainly be chapters on how Dennis Kucinich, through your leadership as a member of the House of Representatives, bills that you introduced through your presidential run, where you really made health care a front burner issue, you will have a chapter that will designate your great contributions to the American people to get a quality, affordable, universal health care. So I do thank you today, sir, because I can tell you today is somewhat of a day of reflection. You should think about how your campaign for president and other work you have done really did move the ball down the track. And so I'd say I thank you and honor you.
I thank the gentleman. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're joined by my good friend John Garamendi from California. And, you know, Congressman Garamendi, I guess on a day like this, you know, you must be full of thoughts about health care reform and the big lift and all of the things that have occurred. What are some of the thoughts that occur to you today, Congressman?
Thank you, Mr. Ellison, and thank you so very much for your consistent, strong voice on what we really need to do here in America to take care of people. At the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, our task is to fulfill that message of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this day really, in many ways, fulfills that. You think about it. Can you have life without health care? Well, probably not for very long. Most everybody I know has had a sickness at one point or another, and you don't get health care, you may very well lose your life. Happiness, we know that most of the bankruptcies, this is before the great crash, but most of the bankruptcies are a direct result of health care and not having sufficient or not having insurance. And so with regard to happiness, wow. And of course, liberty. You just think about the number of Americans that are literally chained or tied to their job because they have health care there, they want to leave, they want to pursue a different course, they want to improve, but they can't because they are tied to their job because of health care. They can't get it. Today, the Supreme Court said that what this House did with the Affordable Health Care Act is constitutional. It is constitutional. It is possible for us. As we just heard from Mr. Kucinich, it's possible for us to reform the health care system. So my thoughts are so happy for America, so happy for that man that I saw 5 years ago that was on his deathbed. And he said, if I can just live another 5 months, I'll be on Medicare, and I can get the treatment that I need without bankrupting my family. Today, he probably will be able to get that. It's a good day. And you think about I was insurance commissioner for 8 years in California, and oh, if only I had this law. If only this law was in place, I could have hammered those insurance companies that were discriminating against people who had pre-existing conditions. But I didn't have this law. And so they were able to get away with discriminating against women because they are a woman, because they're a childbearing age and they may have a child and it might cost the insurance company some money. My chief of staff today had a child who was born with an ailment. That kid, from the day of conception to the day after he was born, had insurance. As soon as the insurance company found out that that child had a serious problem, they stopped the insurance. And the family almost went into bankruptcy, but for the friends and support around them, they would have done so. That is over. Every child born in America will continue to have health care coverage whether they are healthy or not. It's a good day. It's a good day for the children. It's a good day for the people of America. I'm happy.
Well, Congressman, I share your joy today, and I want to let you know that the fact is that there are a lot of really important parts of this bill, and not enough Americans understand what's in the bill. And I can remember back a couple of years ago when I was trying to have community forums in my district, and people who didn't understand the need for health care reform would get loud and boisterous in these meetings, and I would let them talk. I wouldn't let them disrupt the meeting, but I would let them talk, and some of them expressed themselves in very passionate ways. And one of the things they said to me, Congressman, is, did you read the bill? And they wouldn't ask the question. They would basically make an accusation that I didn't read the bill. Of course, I had read the bill. And I think it's now a good idea to really help people understand what good things are in this bill. For example, I think it's important for people to understand that already in the bill, if you have a child under the age of 26, that child can be on your health care insurance. No more worries that your college graduate kid who's not yet got that job is just out there with no insurance. If you're a woman, they can't discriminate against you anymore. If you have a pre-existing condition and you're a child, even at this moment, they can't discriminate against you, and when the bill is fully in effect, they won't be able to discriminate against anyone. If you're a senior, we're helping to make the cost of prescription drugs more affordable by filling in the donut hole. We're also, for Medicare, we have a provision in there that's helping to make sure that screenings are free and to have preventative, healthy, strong seniors so that they would prevent them from getting sick. There's a medical loss ratio which says that the insurance company has to devote 85% of their receipts into health care, not all this other administrative stuff, including exorbitant pay. So, I mean, as we sit back and reflect on what is actually in there, I mean, I think it's important to make those points. Anything you would like to add?
Let me just take up some of those numbers because they're very, very exciting. 13 million Americans will receive $1.1 billion in rebates because the insurance companies have overcharged them. That didn't happen before this bill. I didn't have that power as insurance commissioner to do that. 54 million Americans that are in private health insurance plans will receive free preventative services as a result of this legislation.
54 million?
54 million.
Wow.
And of course, women, millions across this nation, will receive free coverage for comprehensive women's preventative health services. Pap smears, breast X-rays and the like. 32.5 million seniors will have received one or more preventative services, and that's in 2011. In 2012, 14 million seniors have already received these services. 105 million Americans will no longer have a lifetime limit on their coverage. Right now, or before this bill was in effect, you go up to $100,000 or $200,000. If you had serious illness, you blow through that, bam. That's it. You don't get any more coverage. No longer, no more limits lifetime limits are gone. 17 million children with pre-existing conditions can no longer be denied coverage by insurance companies. 6.6 million young adults, and you know what you're just talking about. You're talking about my daughter. She graduated at the age of 21, 22, lost her insurance. When this bill passed, the day after it passed, she said, "Dad, can I get back on your policy?" The answer was yes. Actually, it took 6 months, but it did happen. 5.3 million seniors in the donut hole, this is the drug coverage thing, have saved $3.7 billion on prescription drugs already. Now, our good friends, the Republicans, want to repeal all this. So you go through this list. 13 million Americans will not receive a rebate if the Republicans succeed in repealing the bill. 54 million Americans will not receive preventative services. 6.6 million young Americans will not be on their parents' coverage in the age of 21 and 22. There's a lot of takeaways from what the Republicans want to do with their repeal.
Well, if the gentleman would yield, I think that is a very important point to make. Sadly, as soon as the Affordable Care Act was upheld, our friends in the Republican caucus immediately said, well, we're going to have a repeal vote. Well, they've already had repeal votes. What are we doing this over and over again for? Well, we're doing it for a very important reason, to make a political point. Now, you know, as they were announcing another repeal vote, we hadn't done anything about student loans this week, which are expiring. We hadn't done anything about jobs, and we hadn't done anything about the transit bill, which is due to expire. I mean, it's just really amazing how much time we have for stuff that doesn't matter, just political gamesmanship. But, you know, I must share this with you, Congressman. I'm saddened by the fact that our Republican friends won't join with us in this awesome, good thing that happened to the American people today. I wish they would finally come around. It's like, look, you know, you fought the health care. Well, first of all, between 2000 and 2006, you had the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. You didn't do anything except give a bunch of money to Big Pharma, and we're trying to fix that right now. But all this stuff they talk about, oh, we want to do sell insurance across state lines, we want to do tort reform. They could have done all that. They didn't do it because they didn't want to do it. Now they say that's what they would have done, but that's not what they did do when they could do it. So there you go with that. But, okay, so now that the Democrats went and took up health care, after many, many years of trying, we get it through. They fought it tooth and nail. To their credit, none of them supported the final vote on the Affordable Care Act. They were solid and unanimously against conferring the benefits that are contained in the Affordable Care Act. Well, now they got around saying the bill was unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. And you heard this hue and cry day and night. And they even called themselves constitutional conservatives. Well, the Constitutional Court has said this bill is constitutional, so you would think they'd say, okay, we just want to make sure it's constitutional. Now we're ready to join hands with you and celebrate this great thing to make sure all Americans can go to the doctor. And what do? They schedule a repeal vote. But here's what I want people to know, Congressman. According to the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan entity, if they repeal this bill, it'll cost the American people it'll add to the deficit $230 billion. These are my friends who never tire of saying, oh, we're conferring debt on our children and grandchildren. They always say that. I'm sure it's been tested by, you know, some high-paid individual who does that kind of stuff. They never tire of saying our children and grandchildren, debt on our children and grandchildren. But if they strip the Affordable Care Act, as they plan on doing on July 11th, they would drop a big debt and add to the deficit.
Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Ellison, and thank you for your leadership on these and so many other issues. I'm looking at that sign next to you, Republicans' No Job Agenda. A repeal of the Affordable Health Care Act and the Patients' Bill of Rights is not going to create jobs. In fact, it is going to make it very, very difficult for small businesses, because the Affordable Health Care Act actually helps small businesses.
Right.
They don't have the mandate. Small businesses don't have the mandate, but what they do have is an opportunity they have an opportunity to get health insurance at an affordable cost, which they've never had before. Small business, one person, a husband and wife perhaps, and 2 or 3 employees, literally was impossible for them to get affordable health insurance for themselves and for their 3 employees. Under this bill, they can get it. It's subsidized, to be sure, but they can finally get insurance, and across the state of California, across this nation, we're finding thousands upon thousands of businesses for the first time going into the insurance market, able to buy insurance, getting coverage for themselves and their employees while providing what insurance must do, which is the knowledge and the stability that is necessary for the financings of that business to succeed. The other thing, and I'm just going to pick up one more that's very, very close to me. In California, the Affordable Health Care Act provided funding for 1,154 clinics. Way back in 1978, when I was in the California legislature, in '76, as a member of the Assembly, I authored legislation to establish the Rural Health Act. And that built clinics in the rural part of California. And today, as a result of that, there are clinics all across the state of California, and the Affordable Health Care Act keeps those clinics in business. This is where many Californians and across this nation, Americans, access the health care system. It's there in their community. These are the community clinics that are so critically important in providing the health care that Americans need. The call for repeal kills these clinics. These clinics will die if this bill is repealed. So out across the state, even in the most conservative part of my new district, Colusa County, there are clinics that are dependent upon this legislation and will be able to continue as a result of the Affordable Health Care Act found by the Supreme Court, including Chief Justice Roberts, to be constitutional. This is constitutional. The legislature, Congress, and the Senate and the President have the power to solve one of the great America dilemmas, the health care system. Over time, we'll change this. We'll make modifications. Among those modifications ought to be an expansion of Medicare, which is efficient, effective, universally available to every American over the age of 65. How good it is, how hard and how determined people are. If I can just live to 65, I'll have Medicare. It's a great program. We ought to expand it. We ought to make it universal. Mr. Ellison, I don't know how much time you have.
We got about 30 minutes or so.
Well, there are things we could talk about.
Yeah, I do. I'd actually like to take up what happened with Eric Holder today.